Wemby had an interview with The Ringer. And he sat down with the French journalist, too, I believe, on Sunday as well. We're getting to know this cat a little bit more and more. I'm having a little bit of deja vu.
In what sense?
You know, this guy is he's like the other guys. He's so good. You know, the more I hear about him, the more you like him.
He's read an article in the Express yesterday about how he met one of his favorite author, I think his actual favorite author, after the win in Salt Lake City, and how he was just like overly excited. And it's like a not science fiction, but like a fictional writer, kind of like fantasy fiction. I don't want to get the genre wrong, but I'm thinking like Game of Thrones ish. You know, that kind of stuff.
Brandon Sanderson is his name, and he's a fantasy author. Yeah.
Thank you. So there's some series, some Mist series that was referenced, and so it was really just kind of cool, like a cool introspection at who Wemby is, and he apparently gave the author his game-worn jersey from the win in Salt Lake City, you know, signed it up and everything. How many NBA players would you guess have come off the court and taken off their jersey and signed it and given it to an author of a fantasy series? I mean,
David Robinson would be the guy. Like I'm telling you, it's deja vu. I feel like I've gone down this road before, and I would have said, you know, replace him with Tim Duncan or replace him with David Robinson. Say the same sentence. You go, yeah, that makes sense.
I mean, it's just wild. I mean, for what it's worth, by the way, the author apparently brought something as well. So it wasn't like a one-way exchange. It was a signed copy of one of his books. You know, I'm not trying to say that that's not worth as much as a game-worn Wemby jersey in a win, but
I bet it's a bit, well, right now it's about equal. That Wemby jersey is going to be worth a little bit more as the years progress.
Imagine being that author and just, you know, your PR person or your booking person or your publisher or whatever just hits you, get an email one day and they're like, there's this French basketball player that's a big fan of yours, and would you be willing to meet him? And you're just like, I don't know, man. I mean, tell him to come to the signing. You know, we're going to Barnes and Noble next week, and I tell him to get in line. They're like, no, this is Victor Wembanyama. You're like, who? That the character that I introduced on page 263? They're like, no, the global phenom. What a cool little story. I mean, seriously, he's such an interesting person.
As we said, Spurs headed into the lottery. They own the 5th worst record in the NBA. Their pick has a chance to land anywhere from 1st to 9th. As far as first pick and second pick and third pick and fourth pick, all about a 10% chance for all of those. The 5th pick at 2.2%, the 6th pick, they have a 19% chance at 6, a 7th pick at 26, and then after that 8, you get a lesser chance. The 9th would be almost nil. That doesn't look like they'll fall that far. Last year, the Portland Trailblazers sat where the Spurs sit today. They ended up drafting 3rd. The Indianapolis Pacers in 2022 dropped from 5th to 6th. In 2021, the Cleveland Cavaliers went from 5th to 3rd. So, you know, where you land, for the most part, the 5th place seed seems to jump up just a little bit. So there might be, well, I mean, this draft, among others, its beauty is in the eye of the beholder. There is no separator. There really is not one guy that you go, he's the one, we're all playing for him, or not playing, depending on how you define it. But so there's not that. I can tell you this, you know, when it's like this, where you've got long-term prospects that you got briskets, it makes it easier on a GM initially, but harder in the long term. You know what I mean? Because I'm not sure how many of the lottery picks are even going to be in the league in about 3 years. I mean, there's just really not a whole lot there. So best case scenario is not only that the Spurs jump up to third and maybe get their pick amongst whatever they're prettiest. But I don't want to see anything of this Toronto pick. The more pressing need about the Spurs this year is that deal that they made with Toronto. It's a top 6 protected pick. So if Toronto's selection is 7th or later, it's going to go to San Antonio. We want them to get that 6th or higher. We want them to jump up. Spurs have a 54% chance of acquiring the pick. So 46% chance that the Raptors are going to fall out of the 6, and the Spurs are going to end up drafting 2 in the top 10. Which ordinarily you'd be celebrating. And, there was pretty happy press conference the other day. Do you trust Brian Wright to make this pick? Just on the top of your mind, you go, oh, Brian, they got it.
I don't want to act like the Spurs are bad at drafting and only lucked out with Wemby because they won the lottery. Okay, I think that would be disingenuous. But do you feel like they're a great drafting team?
Well, it's such a hard thing to say because there are 2 kinds of great drafting teams. There's the teams like Detroit who are forever in the top 5 and draft the names that everybody go, oh yeah, that's a great pick, but none of it works. Or there's the kind of team like the Spurs, or I'll put Boston or Miami, where they just go find guys. Those are the drafters. It's easy to pick out good talent. So I'm not sure the Spurs for the longest time were great at finding good guys because they, there were no expectations at 28. So you know what I mean? But they consistently found dudes that worked. They're good at that. They haven't proven to be overly successful judging against all the good talent, like picking the prime meat. They haven't proven that they can see great talent and see how it will apply. And maybe part of that is it's such a moving target for what the team's going to look like. But really, when you go down the list of the first round draft picks over the years, there's nothing to write home about. There's Lonnie Walker still in the league. What's the other kid? The guy that's long gone. Primo, of course, we got an issue there, but that's a whole other thing. So I'm not sure if I distrust, but they haven't proven to me yet that they can spot talent that is applicable to their needs. I mean, anybody can see a good basketball player.
Well, and anybody can draft Wemby, right? I mean, that's a whole different anybody thing. And so it's not that I don't trust the Spurs specifically, although I don't, but and Brian Wright, but it's hard to trust a lot of teams. I mean, because who is the team in called the last 5-6 years that I guess Oklahoma City would be the answer, which is also terrifying as we've discussed. But who is the team that you look at and say, man, they killed that draft and it completely changed their fortune?
Well, Orlando has done a pretty decent job of the slow burn. I would say they've done now they don't jump off the page. It's not like you see them and suddenly they're good. But over the last 3 to 4 years, they've kind of adjusted their draft strategy. They had a type for a while in Orlando. Everybody was real tall. They just wanted tall and we'll figure it out. And they kind of adjusted that with drafting some point guards. So I'm going to give them some credit. I mean, they got to pick Paolo Blanchero. It's another one of those. He was by far the best guy out there, and they got him, and he proved to be that good. But I will say that they've slowly improved their way finding the proper draft. Jalen Suggs and finding point guards to kind of play along. So I'll give them some love. Everybody's got their diamonds in the rough. Well, there was a good example last night of Sacramento. I think they've drafted and traded very appropriately over the last couple of years. It's just, some of these teams have to build. But, the NBA, here's the thing about the NBA, though. We're going to have 30 number 1 picks come out. And of those 30, there are going to be 5 players of substance come out of this draft. And 25 will just be names that will pass in the night and 20 of them won't even sign a second contract.
Then, yeah. I mean, in addition to not really trusting based on recent history, this is a thicker haystack to find the needle.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So, if you don't trust in general the ability to find the needle, now you're exacerbating the haystackness of the haystack.
You're right.
And so
but I don't
trust the situation at all.
As a guy that's had to put together when you go and you're putting together a team, and whether it's kindergarten, well, not say competitive basketball, whether it's seventh graders or seniors, you have all these guys, and you can obviously tell the group that has talent. You can just tell. That's easy. You can find those. But putting together a team with guys with different kinds of talents and to have them all work together, that's the real magic. And I think that this kind of draft, there is a bit of cover because there's no pressure on whoever is going to end up with a number one overall pick to get that guy. That guy, I mean, there's either no pressure or all the pressure, and Wemby was easy. But to go get a guy to get better, because there is no one guy out there that everybody points at and says, that's the guy for you. So I think it provides a little bit of cover for GMs because they can say, well, everybody's even. I drafted this guy because he fits best on our team. So I think you can draft appropriately to your team's needs without having to get lost in, well, he's not the best player. You missed on the best player. Well, the best player was in your eyes. There's no numbers that tell me anything different. So I'm going to draft appropriately to my team's needs. And if you get to do that, sometimes you can you get a little bit of cover and you do a better job other than he's the most talented guy. You got to get him and make him fit. Well, find a guy that already kind of fits. And you can do that, I think, starting at about pick 4 or 5. At that moment, it's whatever you think looks good.
It's so scary to trust this whole process because we finally there's finally something to lose. You know what I mean? It's a different thing when you're wandering in the desert and you're wandering in the darkness. It's just like, oh, hopefully we hope, it's like when you're on Survivor. I know you still are now it's not even worth.
I'm like 5 episodes behind. I saw it.
Yeah, it's not. It's never gonna happen. Just delete.
I'll watch
delete the
Succession
recordings
before I see this season.
Yeah. So, but it's like when people are on Survivor and they're so desperate and they're messing with the flint and they get just the tiniest flicker of a flame and how it represents such hope. We're not in that boat. Like we have a flame. We have a bonfire going. And so now it's just a matter. Actually, it's not quite a bonfire, but we have a flame. So now it's nursing the flame. Now you have to add some husk. You know what I mean? You have to build a little bit of a thing here so that it can live and thrive and provide warmth for you. And so nobody needs a hero here. You know what I'm saying? Like you don't have to reach beyond whatever normalcy in the name of pulling something incredible off. And that's why my biggest concern is that they're going to forego most of veteran acquisition. And they're going to rely too much on this and put too many eggs in this basket, and we're going to lose another season.
Well, here is the good news. If you looking at the numbers, let's just say the Spurs end up drafting at 5. I think that's an appropriate look. We're not asking for much. I don't think they're going to jump up to 3. It's possible, but I also don't think they're going to fall to 8th or 9th. So let's just throw 5. With that in mind, over the last 10 years, these are the guys that have gone at the 5th pick. Last year, Asir Thompson. Year before, Jaden Ivey. Jalen Suggs, Isaac Okoro, Darius Garland in 2019, Trae Young in 2018, De'Aaron Fox, we saw him last night at 2017, Chris Dunn at Minnesota. Then now we're getting a little skinny. 2015, Mario Hezonja, 2014, Dante Exum. He's still in the league, but, bounced around for a long time. Combined at the 5th pick over the last 10 years, 5 All-Star appearances, 2 third-team All-NBA. So of that, just about everybody I named are players that do make a difference. So while this year might be different over the last 10 years, skinny draft, fat draft, highly talented, whatever it might be, consistently there's NBA guys at 5. That's the good news.
The bad?
The bad news is I don't know if Brian Wright's capable of finding that guy. And I'm not saying he can't. But this draft is going to feel very much like Jeremy Sohan, where you see him and they draft him and you're like, what? Okay, let's hope that you see something that I don't.
I mean, I'm not. If you have a Jeremy Sohan draft, it's not the end of the world for you as a franchise. Like that sounds so much worse than it is. It sounds meaner than it should be. But you're not that away. You know what I'm saying? Like you're within range for competing now.
Are we? No, that's another thing I want to talk about. After watching the play-in games last night, we're not far from those guys. We're really not. We're not very far away from what I saw from Sacramento or Golden State or the Pelicans.
Right.
I mean, they're really not. But we have to remember that's the play-in rosters. Those are the guys that they're not very. That was not good basketball last night. It was entertaining basketball, but I wouldn't call last night precision basketball by all that played. They're far away from what we saw just a couple of days before from those teams that are sitting first, second, and third. There's a reason why they were playing yesterday. So to say we're not very far from them, we better not be very far because they're all not very good. So we're not very far from them. Well, we're a long way from being what we saw just from the other teams that were sitting and watching like we were last night. So let's judge where we are appropriate. We can get to where they are. We better be real near what we saw yesterday next year. We better be.
And let's just use Jeremy Sohan's name and sort of talent as a placeholder.
Mm-hmm.
Are they a Jeremy Sohan away?
Yes.
Another Jeremy Sohan away.
They are an appropriate draft because there's no stars. And I'm still I'm about 80% on Jeremy even today. If
that's all they add is Jeremy Sohan 2.0.
That's all they're going to get, enough? Man. No.
But I'm saying because they're all the reports are they're not going to dabble in free agency. They're not going to trade. Blah blah blah. I mean, that would feel like such a letdown if that's all they added.
Well, RJ, I'm going to warn you. I feel it's coming that way, and I think what the draft that they're going to bring in, because there are no stars, and because the top 5 by most are looking like Euro guys that are going to have to be briskets. The Spurs are going to draft somebody in a very high place, 4, 6, 4, 5, whatever it might be, that we go, Now, it could be a guy like Dalton Connect, who we know exactly the skill they drafted him for. That dude is coming to shoot. Or it could be a 7-foot vacuum that we go, that guy is coming in. We know what he's going to do. Or it could be a guy like Jeremy Sohan, a 6'11" guy who's got a little bit of skill, or a 6'7" guy, a little bit of skill that can do a lot of different things. And we're like, okay, I see what you got. Now, how are you going to use it? We can look at that, and both of them could be successful. And we're not going to know immediately because, again, this is a weird draft. There's just nobody great. There's a lot of good. And so much of it will rely on player and situation they land in.
Then that shouldn't be the primary way you build up your team this offseason.
Well, that's why they're saying wait a year. That's why they're going, this draft is just other things.
You don't have to do just draft related. You don't have to just throw away another year.
Well, I don't think
because the draft talent wasn't that great.
Like I said, if they draft appropriately, there is no reason they won't be playing in a play-in game. They might still have a losing record, but just Victor getting older and being who Wemby is going to add 8 games next year, 9 games. There'll be 9 games we win just because he's Wemby. So can we draft a guy that's going to add another 4 or 5? Now we're in the play-in.
That doesn't feel like enough. I mean, with what we have going on here. I mean, if the Spurs are in the play-in game next year, is that a success?
Yes.
I disagree. That's too low of a bar. That's way too low. They have to be a tried and true playoff team, independent of the
in 2 years
format. No, in a year from now.
That's what I'm saying. In Wemby's first 2 years, they need to be tried and true playoff, and they will be if they get in the play-in. But, dude, I think your sights are a little high.
You've been saying the last few days how it's not the playoffs.
It's not. But I'm saying I think to expect anything more than about 8 or I'd say 15 win improvement if they draft appropriately.
He's a top 5 player in the NBA. Top 5. You have to give him more than that. You have to give him more than just enough talent to get into the play-in game.
37 wins next year. That's a couple away from 500. I would not be upset with that at all. 15, adding 15 wins. 37 in a play-in scenario, I think they're right on schedule. And that's when you can go get the free agent that will build it. That's the schedule that appears that they're on.
You're the brisket seeker. That's what you want.
I don't know if I'm seeking the brisket. I think I'm resigned to the fact that that's what it's going to be.
Maybe to be fair, in the brisket analogy, it's been on for a few hours. Like, you're kind of stuck right now.
Yeah.
You can't eat anything, because I put it on earlier this morning and it's only been
I got some time.
I'm
going to have to wait. And then I'm going to have to fight through the stall, which will be some kind of bad pick here in a year or so. And then we'll fight through that. But I can tell you that I think everybody that walked away from Sunday or Monday's postmortem, I couldn't get over the fact that how happy everybody was, how upbeat the entire roster of team and owner, and because we only did win 22 games. I mean, we're the 5th worst team in the league, and everybody around us is furious at themselves, at their coaches, at their players, yet us alone, we're happy with where we sit. So I think that they've resolved themselves like, hey, man, we're right on schedule, and anything that happens to speed things up, great, but we're still moving along with a 3-year plan.
It's just, it doesn't have to be this way.
And I believe that if drafting appropriately, they can add those extra wins to get to about 37 to 38 wins. And after what we witnessed to close the season down, I think that's possible. 500 basketball. Now, we have to hope that most of the teams we play are using most of their G League guys.
Wow. Well, let's hope that we can be a 500 team next year with one of the very best players in the world.
And given the numbers, that's playing realm, sadly.
What you're
in
saying
the knife
is
fight
like,
that is the West.
What you're doing is like, your wife is like, okay, we're going to prepare dinner. She's like, I got the filet mignon. You do the sides. You're like, great. And you just went and got a freeze, bag of French fries and laid them on a cookie sheet and threw them in the oven. You're like, there's our meal.
I understand that there's a timing involved, and there's other things that are in play other than me. And I could get my team as good as I possibly can in a year by adding whatever free agents I can pull in, by going and drafting the very best guy that'll fit our team perfectly, whoever that is. And you know what? I've still got to go against Denver. I've still got to go against the Timberwolves. I still have to go against those rising teams in the West on a regular basis. I got to hang on against the Phoenix Suns. I still got the Clippers to contend with. There's going to be years before there's even room at the top. So I think the Spurs looked around and said, Minnesota's on the ascendance. We know what Dallas is doing with Luka. We watch Houston with all these young guys. We're on a destination with them, not who's currently on top. So our schedule is one thing. Our talent development's another thing.
This is such a loser mentality.
No, it's not. It's an appropriate way to build.
We have to wait for everything to line up our way.
You are getting exactly what's coming. You just got to do it right.
And what happens if you're that patient and you wait for everyone and everyone else to not be good so you can be the only good team left, and then somebody gets hurt or a million different things happen?
All of that is all true. I'm not saying that the planning is false, but I do understand the environs of where I live. And if it's going to take a slow build while I get myself better and wait for the attrition to inevitably occur at the top, timing is not everything, but it's a lot.
It's going to be disappointing if 37 wins is the goal. 500 basketball. Hang the banner.
It's a marked improvement.
We are frauds.